All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's break down the major team regions. Basically, I'm not going to be covering PSG, the VCS teams, and so forth. Maybe they can be good. Like, I've watched a couple of PSG games, but I don't feel comfortable enough to judge them. Especially through the same lens as I'm judging everybody else. So in my mind, I don't think it matters too much. My criteria is lane phase, which is pretty self-explanatory, right? It's like, how good are you at punishing mistakes of lane phase? How do you play around jungle and so forth? Team fighting, also pretty self-explanatory. Like these two things in my mind is what I would highlight as micro. I think in most cases, the ceilings of teams are determined by how well you do these two things, which comes down to micro, right? Like the ceiling of a team like T1 is insanely high because their lane phase and their team fighting is insanely high too. They might lack in champion death, they might lack in macro on previous patches, right? They might lack in consistency even, right? But this is what opens up the ceiling of a team, how good they are mechanically, pretty much. Champion death is pretty much, it's like how much of the meta or champions available that might be good can you cover, right? There are some players, for example, a player like Chovy doesn't like to play Syndra, doesn't like to play Orianna. A player like Knight likes to play Azir less. A player like Faker likes to play Corki and Tristana less. But then you have someone like Caps that likes to play pretty much everything besides maybe Yone, right? And there are circumstances where players can be great in certain metas, and there are circumstances where players can be worse in certain metas too, right? And a champion death is pretty much how much of that do you cover. Like a player like KIA and Owner, I like them less when they are playing in a meta where it's all about 3v3s on side, and it comes down to contesting through side and contesting through the solo laners. But when KIA is playing bot lane meta where it's all about the lane phase and then transferring the pressure through the mid wave, I do think that KIA is one of the best, if not the best player in the world, right? Or at this particular thing when it comes to playing, for example, Lucian Nami, right? All right, macro. This is basically, it's like every game eventually leads to the game deciding fight. There's going to be a fight that decides the game, right? The Nexus explodes. All of the decisions that lead up to that aren't surrounding fighting is basically macro, right? It's farm distribution, lane assignment, and how you judge information real time to suffocate the enemy in terms of taking camps and pushing waves deeper, right? A great example in Europe is that G2 is ahead of the macro curve heavily in comparison to Mad Lions and Fnatic, due to the fact that they judge information super well real time, and Mad Lions and Fnatic play a game that is very heavy catered towards chasing kills, right? Macro is basically, it's like understanding the movement of everybody, understanding how you should move in order to get the correct lane assignment, and then understanding which waves you should push and what conditions you set yourself up for in terms of, setting yourself up for the objectives, right? Getting the momentum of the game. Like Hanwha Life is a great example. Bilibili is a great example. G2 is a great example, right? Gen.G was, for the longest time, a great example, but I think less so now. But more on that when we get to Gen.G. Consistency, I think, is like this one. I think you just have to point specifically to like some of the LPL teams, right? LNG, Weibo Gaming, and even Top Esports. They suffer in the consistency department. Their format is very unique, so it becomes a little bit harder to judge, definitely. But consistency is basically, it's like how big of a range is your ceiling and your floor in terms of your gameplay, right? There's games where teams do all of the above very well, but then in the same vein, they can do it very poorly, right? LNG went from being first in the regular split and then losing the only best of 5 that they played, and then beating, again, Weibo Gaming, a tired Weibo Gaming, after they, of course, lost against Bilibili, right? Legacy, clutch factor. I think that legacy is pretty much tied into clutch factor too. I think that having the capacity and showing that you're capable of winning best of 5s when it matters the most, I think is super important. I think clutch factor, the way I define it, is basically someone who's bold enough to break form You break form in terms of how you engage and the plays that you look for in order to find game-winning opportunities. Those decisions can be the difference. It can be the difference between, of course, losing the game and winning the game. I think that T1's run last year at Worlds was the epitome of that. Or let's say Chovi's run in Spring Split was the epitome of that. I think it is also something that occurs in Champion Select, being bold enough to recognize patterns and how to break the enemy through draft and recognize the trends and the patterns of what is actually important. I think that Hanwha Life did a way better job while you had Gen.G being stuck on Koki. I think that Koki, Gen.G and Team Liquid, the way they lost their finals was very similar. They came in as favorite, but they kind of maintained this idea that they need to be playing Koki Ekisante every game, and they didn't follow along with the evolution, and they weren't willing to break form through their practice. When Gen.G won MSI, they dropped the Yon Katus, they picked Nidalee. They were the ones breaking a form, and they did it with such poise. The same thing that happened when Canyon locked in Kha'Zix against the Xin Zhao that had just dominated them when they are 2-1 up. Right? I think Canyon as a player is also like just a clutch player. Like we have AmbiXX in the chat referencing to Canyon picking talent against T1 or the Canyon Kane versus Gen.G. I think those are definitely like good examples. That was 2022, not 2023, but that's it's all good. It's all good. The point is made and the point is good. All right, so I have covered it. The last one is my own bias. I think it's important to highlight that I am biased. Everybody, anyone who tells you they're not biased are delusional. There's going to be things that I find are more important than other things. And there's going to be things that I saw while I'm watching these games. And there's going to be things that I missed. I think that always, if I review games thoroughly, there's definitely things that stand out to me, and you see more details than when you're just watching them and co-streaming them. But I can say that I have watched every LCS game besides like 2 weeks of regular play. I've watched every LEC game. I've watched every LCK game, every LPL game. LCK games sometimes overlapped with LPL. So definitely there were cases where I missed out some of the LCK games, but the high profile ones, the best of fives and so forth, I think is, that's it, Someone else mentioned as well, Showmaker always tries it with his game 5 weird picks. He definitely like always gets weird in game 5. Like he managed to be useful on that LeBlanc in the end in that game 5 against T1, but shit was dangerous for a while. All right. Where do we start, guys? Do we start from 1, or do we make it interesting and we ramp up? Do we start with like number 14? Because I'm only going to cover major region teams. I'm only going to cover major region teams. I think that we can maybe start here. Let's start here. So number 14 for me is 100 Thieves. In terms of their range of play, I could see a world where maybe they take games off of like a Mad Lions, I think that they could maybe on a bad day also beat Fnatic, but the thing is, I think that basically their range is 13-14. I think 100 Thieves were very fortunate that they made it to this tournament. I think their strengths lie in Quids. I think that Quid plus River are very strong players. I think that their macro play is very bad. I think that their macro play is like a worse version of Mad Lions and Fnatic, where they are very chasing kills. I think that they don't pay attention to side laning enough. I think that there's an element there that, just makes me worried. I think that in terms of their individual level 2, I'm not too hyped about Ayla. I think that their improvement in the department of AD was good for them, but I think that the main strength that 100 Thieves has, which is a good thing, is that they all commit to the same idea. Even though I don't think that their ideas are the greatest, at least they commit to the same idea. And I think that is like their biggest strength. I think their weaknesses Lion, their macro, very kill reliant and can bleed on side, and in games where the enemy scales better over time. I think that if you bring discipline against a team like 100 Thieves, I think that this is a team that is going to fall over. I think that it was pretty much like a miracle that they made it in the first place, and I think that they took the opportunity that C9 gave them and smacked them on the head, which is a good thing, you know. I think players to watch, I already mentioned players to watch. I think Quid and River. I think that River was quite silent as a player when it comes down to his regular season play, but he stepped it up definitely when it came to playoffs. I think that Quid is a player that is willing to carry games, whether it's his own play or other champs. I think that he has good champ range, but I think that what he gets away with beating on like some of the weaker teams in LCS, I think that Quid is not good enough to break into the mid lane pool that we see. Could be a world where maybe 100 Thieves could beat a team like Mad Lions, but I doubt it. All right, let's just continue. Let's just slot in another one here. Number 13 for me is Mad Lions. So I think the biggest strength of Mad Lions, in my opinion, is their early game lane phase. I think that Alvaro and, of course, and Elioya connect very well on the map and pressure camps very well. I think this is something that even G2 could learn from. I think that Elioya's map openings are very clever, and I think that this is a team that definitely can get advantages. But similar, like I think the issue of Mad is very similar to the issue of 100 Thieves. I think that Mirwin, as well as a player, has an exciting champion pool, and the roles of the players are very defined. I think that Supa over time definitely played better, but I think that in a similar vein, I think that the macro of Mad Lions is too kill-centric. Macro, very kill-centric, and they play their mid to late game as an extension of their early game, which makes miss waves and miss opportunities to pressure objectives. Like the main thing that I see when I watch Mad Lions is when they get to steal waves, they don't know how to extend that, you know? They don't know how to extend that. It's like the impact of Mirwin pushing a deep wave, he doesn't know how to translate that into pressure. Like if you're watching BB or, for example, Bwipo even in Champions Queue, they understand the impact of pushing a wave, and they understand when they should be opening through mid to give pressure to the team. And I think this is where Mad Lions always fumble. It's like when the enemy team doesn't give them the fight easily, they tend to become overeager. They fight in spaces they shouldn't fight in. And I think this has been a trend for Mad Lions very long. I think the key thing with a team like Mad Lions is that they are willing to fight. They're willing to be connected. Same thing with 100 Thieves. Is that if teams like Mad Lions, 100 Thieves, and also Fnatic are going to look fine against most teams because they're willing to roll with the punches. That's why, like at MSI, people were like, wow, Fnatic, they played against Gen.G, they were quite competitive. Is that they are willing to roll with the punches, and they are willing to chase for the kills, right? But eventually, the more disciplined team, the team that has better macro, the moment they take a moment to slow down, the game is fully in their control. We saw that with FlyQuest against 100 Thieves, we saw that with G2 against Mad Lions, and we saw that also with my example of Fnatic against Gen.G. They roll with the punches, they are willing to swing, right? And I think the players to watch is just Alvaro, Elioya, and Mirwin. I think if anything, maybe we just keep it to Elioya and Mirwin, so we just have 2 players per team to keep it clean and crispy. I think these are the 2 players to watch. Mirwin with his exciting champion pool, and Elioya with his very strong early game pathing to connect with Alvaro. I think that makes them unique. The main thing for Mad Lions is that I do like the level of confidence they come in with. I think that the fact that Mad Lions managed to take a best of 5 against G2 when they were given that opportunity is a very big plus. It's a very big plus. I think that in regards to what I mentioned before, like the clutch factor, it's like Fnatic had opportunities to beat G2, but they didn't take that. I like the bravado of Mad Lions. And I think with that alone, I do think that there is a potential range here for them to cause some upsets against the higher end LCS and LEC teams. Because I do think there is a world where they can take a game or 2 against the other LCS and the other LEC teams. So I think at the deep end, probably puts me like a level 14 type of range. I think that if they make it into top 8 somehow, they have outdone themselves at a level that I can't even like conceive. I do think that that would be like, wow, that would be simply wow, you know? I think I'm trying to count the teams because it would be like FlyQuest, Fnatic, Team Liquid, G2. I think Team Liquid G2 I think would be tough to win, very tough to win. So I do think that like 11-14 maybe is like reasonable. Yeah. All right, let's continue to the next one. Number 12. Number 12 for me is, you know, it's hard for me to judge this team because it's a very strange team. I think the whole year has been awfully weird for this team in particular. I do think that they have insanely talented players, right? Insanely talented players, but the legacy of their performances and their consistency is really plaguing this team, right? So we're putting Fnatic at number 12, but at the same time, they're going to have some range here, right? I do think that Fnatic at their best could beat maybe like a Damwon or an LNG maybe, right? I do think that that is a possibility, right? If we just think about their players, when it comes to Humanoid, Razor performing at their best, right? It's like these are players that have the capacity, right? Like in my mind, when we think back to lane phase and team fighting, these are very good players, very good players. And I mentioned before, this is for me the key to be able to be able to open the door to, of course, the ceiling of your team, right? So 12 in terms of the range, like let's just break down the strengths. I think that mechanically, very strong team, good prep team. I think that they have good drafts, good prep team. I think that early game, very sharp and strong around the 3v3, around mid, around Humanoid. Right? Weaknesses, very inconsistent in performances, very varied. It's very varied, very low floor in individual performances. Macro is too focused around kills. And not concentrated around economy. This one is very strange because this one is very strange because in my mind, like when I think back to MSI, Fnatic was very good at this. I think that June, Razork, and Humanoid played very good on side in terms of concentrating on economy. But now I feel like June's performance in particular, June's performance is far lower than what we saw in Spring/MSI. I think that June has been consistently disappointing in my mind. I think that when I think back about the regional finals of June, I think that he played quite poorly if I compare it to what I expect from him. And I think that this really puts a damper on the macro. I've seen many times with June is showing on vision, him getting caught. After June had a very good spring split and a very good MSI too in terms of individual performance. So I think this is what's hurting them macro-wise the most. Something I want to talk about when it comes to players, I did think that coming into this World Championship, I think mid laners are the most important, support second, and then jungle third. I think that I'm a little bit undecided on jungle and support, but support is insanely important in terms of what you can and cannot do macro-wise. I think players to watch, as per usual, is just Humanoid and Razork. I think these are players that, at their peak, can compete with the best, right? And I think that's what makes Fnatic an exciting team. I think there are moments where this team are mechanically very good, but in the range, right? In the range, it's like it brings them down all the way to 14. Like their inconsistency brings their range down to 14. I think that at their best, Fnatic can break into a top 8. It's very important to remember as well what the format is. So when we're talking about top 8, it's like being a top 8 team at the tournament. But that is like if everything goes right? We still have to be concerned about like Noah managing pressure. We need to be concerned about Humanoid and his ceiling/floor. The same thing with Razork. If he gets desperate, how is he going to play? Like there's a lot of things that can pull down Fnatic's performance, and that's why they are, for me, a solid 12. But I recognize the range because of the criteria that I mentioned before. I do think that their lane phases and their team fights, when they have to execute micro-wise, they do have a high ceiling. This is a very strong team, but there is inherently a lot of issues there that makes us very scared about putting them higher. Right? This makes us very scared, you know? I don't, at the end of the day, I maybe would put them maybe at a 12 here, because I think for them to lose against 100 Thieves and Matt, I think a lot of things need to go wrong, but I guess we just put it for what it is, you know? All right, number 11, let's just move on to number 11. I just can't see a world where 100 Thieves beats them, so I'm gonna put 13. I don't see 100 Thieves beating them, so. All right, number 11, can anybody guess what number 11 is? Can anybody guess what number 11 is? Any guesses? FlyQuest. FlyQuest. I think that they have made a tremendous improvement in summer. Keep in mind, like being 11th is not, there's no shame in being 11th. There's really no shame in being 11th. I think that when it comes to the big strengths here is that it is very clear that Busio has made massive improvements under the guidance of Mithy. Massive improvements under the guidance of Mithy. Like someone in the chat is talking about MSI was a disaster for Fly, but this team is very different. They have a different mid laner, a way better mid laner. Like let's be clear, like Jensen was not passing the bar. And I think that Busio is actually like a solid player. I think the biggest issue that North America has had is that all supports have been complete ass besides Code JJ. I think Code JJ is has been like the support that has like running the whole region, and I think Busio's improvement was the difference maker in the department of making them be able to catch up to Team Liquid. I think their biggest strength is Inspired and his range of champions. Very consistent in his output. In my mind, the best jungler in the West. This to me, I guess I can comment on because I have been, hyping Razork and talking about Razork for a very long time on the channel. I think The main thing that holds me back from Razor, I think he has very high peaks and he's very creative in his approach and mechanically is willing to execute very dangerous things, right? But Razor is just way too inconsistent. I think Inspired is playing at such a high level consistently, and I think that's what puts him, in my mind, the best jungler in the West currently, you know? I think he's very inconsistent in his output. I think the main difference since last MSI is Busio's improvement. He matches tempo very well, protects dives, and is in tune with new macro concepts. This is crucial because I think that Team Liquid was running the whole region through being very sharp on swaps, punishing people that were not aware on swaps, and punishing Busio showing on the map. Busio is no longer doing that. Busio is actually playing in fog, basing on time, defending dives, and I think Team Liquid didn't get the advantage that they usually do. And I have to highlight Busio's improvement. I think that's a main difference. Even though, like, obviously Quad is also a big fucking difference too, but I think the main difference since last MSI is Busio's improvement. He matches tempo very well. I think the main weakness for me is, I think, the inconsistency. My concern, right? I love Whippo, right? Don't get me wrong. I think Whippo is a really fucking strong player, right? But Whippo, like 1 in 4 games, is going to lose on his own. And that in itself is a danger, right? I worry when these players are going to be challenged by rosters that rosters that are stronger than them on paper. I just don't see a world where FlyQuest is going to upset players with significantly better individual players. I don't think FlyQuest is going to do anything to break the mold. I think that's what makes Team Liquid different. I think that Team Liquid have specialized in some areas, while I think FlyQuest is a very good all-around team. And I think that when you come in as an underdog, you need to be awkward in some way. I think that FlyQuest is very predictable in their way. So there's that. I think is their level of laning is going to be very, very tested. I think that they do not bring anything unique to the table as underdogs, which make them easy to prep for the better teams on paper. Players watch Quad and Inspired for sure. Quad and Inspired are definitely the players to watch. I think that that Quad is exciting and Inspired is very, very exciting. I think these two, very good. I think Whipple's fucking good too, man, but like every now and then he has games where I'm like, what are you doing? You know? Like he played Urgot. Like if I try to match FlyQuest against LNG, Weibo, I just feel like they're not going to get their foot through the door. That's my concern, you know? It's like even though I put Fnatic 12th here, I see a world where Fnatic would match up better against teams that are better than them than FlyQuest does. So maybe there's a world at the end of this where I swap these two around. But I think for now, we're going to keep it here. And now for the range. I think the range... Definitely at the worst, I think a 13. I think 100 Thieves is going... 100 Thieves of Mad are going to be the worst. Are going to be the worst for sure. I can see a world where FlyQuest maybe take games from the Western teams. I could see a world where FlyQuest like challenge all of the Western teams at this tournament. So I guess that would be a 12. The 13 range is like maybe Mad Lions upsets them, you know. So I think it's fair to keep it at that. Maybe there's a world where we move Fnatic up, maybe, because Their range is better, right? There's a world where we maybe move Fnatic over FlyQuest. Let's keep it like that. So currently. All right, number 10. This is where it gets fucking tricky, because fucking LNG. We're like, we're just gonna. Should we just assume that LNG just bring Scout at this point? We should just assume that they bring Scout at this point, I think. So this might be surprising, but I'm trying to think of where we go next. But where the main place where I'm going now, if I think of number 10, just ponder this over for a small second before I make a grand reveal. Because it's like basically 10, 9, 8, 7, you know, this is where we have our TLs, LNGs, DKs, and G2s, right? So here in my mind, I want to put DK. I will put Damwon as 10th. I was insanely surprised that they made it in the fashion that they did against T1. I think that the main savior for DK, like their strength is funneling, aiming. It's just my issue with Damwon, right? Is that I think both of the supers that they are running are not good. I think that the placement of the importance of a super right now drives your whole macro. It drives your whole macro. And I think that Moham and Kellyn as well, they don't drive the macro at all. I think that Moham is a very, very weak player. I think that Moham and in connection, their macro as the game progresses. Leads do not feel honest and they throw games. I think that they managed to beat T1 in that fashion, right? But I don't buy it at all, you know? I think that the meta that we've been in, right? Like the argument for DK, right? The meta we've been in has been very bad for Showmaker. Showmaker currently in his like form in the last months just hasn't been good. Whether it's Tristana, whether it's Koki, I just haven't been hyped about Showmaker. And the main hope, if DK are going to make it to higher ranges, is if Syndra and LeBlanc are like really good. Like if Syndra, LeBlanc, Talia is going to be played every fucking game, then Showmaker is going to be a very different player from what we've seen, right? And that is something that invites the potential for higher ranges. I think that Lucid, you know, still in his rookie year, Lucid playing his first in international tournament. I don't want to put too much stock into what he's going to do, because I think the range of Lucid's performance is also still not quite as consistent as I would like it to be, and as I predicted would be in the future, because he's still in his first year. Lucid's improvement has still been really, really impressive. I think in particular in spring, he was looking very bad, and then coming into playoffs in spring, he found comfort on the Lee Sin, on the Sejuani, and then I think as things progressed, I think that he became like a key player. He's like almost like a better version of Pioshik, I feel like, when it comes to Lucid. So I think the Lucid is a strong player. The main issue, right? I think Damwon looked their best when Kai'Sa, Ezreal, Zeri were the best champions on the patch. That's when aiming was carrying games and Damwon were like contesting everybody, you know? But now it's like we're gonna see Jhin, we're gonna see Ashe, we're gonna see Ziggs. Like we're going to see these champions that are harder to carry from. Like we saw aiming try to play like 2 Ziggs game into Misfortune. Like he was suffering. He was suffering. These are champions that need to win around lane, and I don't think that funneling aiming works the same way as they wanted it to be during that Ezreal, Zeri, Kai'Sa meta, because that's when fucking aiming was popping off. Like when we think about like the champion depth, right? I don't think necessarily aiming is bad at these champs. But when it comes to playing these champs in particular, I do prefer a player like Light over aiming. I think aiming is really fucking good at Zeri, Kaiser, Ezreal, but I think that in terms of this team in particular, they rely on aiming to have agency. I think that Kingen, wildly inconsistent. If you guys watched even the last best of 5 that they played that they won, some of the shit that Kingen tried to pull was crazy. It's like walking away from that best of 5 knowing that Moham and Kingen qualified to the World Championship, playing that best of 5 was a crazy thought to me. Really, it was a really crazy thought to me. I think players to watch, I think it has to be aiming and Showmaker. Aiming and Showmaker, funneling aiming, and the hope that the meta shapes around Showmaker's biggest strengths. Showmaker has to be the player to watch, right? I wonder how much Showmaker can accomplish with LeBlanc and Syndra and Talia. Like, that is the main question, you know? Showmaker could find new form, and maybe he's going to elevate Damwon to new heights. So in my mind, if I think about that range, I think I put Damwon on 10, but I think in terms of their range, I think they can break it all the way to 6. I think they can break it all the way to 6, and I think that maybe at worst, like they drop to Fnatic, you know? I think the more and more I think about it, I should be moving Fnatic up above Fly, but maybe we do that later. Okay, so Damwon for me is 10th. And then now I will follow up here with... This is where it gets very hard, guys. This is where it gets really difficult. So it's like LNG is a very strange team, right? Because I think when Zika and Scout have agency, right? When they have agency, I do think that this team is good, right? So we think about the Scout on Yone. I think of Zika Renekton games. I do think that when their solo laners have agency, they win games, right? They made a very nice run, very nice run when it came down to, you know, the regular split in the Heaven group. But my main concern about this team is that I don't rate Weiwei and Hang high at all. I think Weiwei has had a very bad performance in comparison to his run with Weibo last year. I think that this is a team that lacks creativity, and I think in a tournament like this is where the legacy and the consistency will really be tested. I honestly think this was probably the worst year of Gala I've seen in a long time. I didn't get the aura from Gala, and I don't get as excited when I mention the name Gala. I think that with the other AD carries that are coming out from the East, I probably would put Gala last on that list. So, like, think about the AD carries that are being sent. We have Jackie-Love, Elk, Light, Gumayushi, right? Gumayushi, Viper, Pays, Aiming. And I would put Gala last on that list. I don't get excited when I think of Hang. I think that he is Moham level. And I think that Weiwei, you know, a play like Peanut. I know he's going to lock in Poppy, Maokai, Ivan, Vi, and he's going to be fucking amazing, right? What do I think of when I think of Weiwei? There's nothing that excites me. There is nothing that excites me when I think of Weiwei. This year has been very disappointing for me when it comes to Weiwei. He's been like getting away with like the occasional Sejuani, Maokai because the role is so simple to play. I think that their solo laners are really good. Strong laners, strong mechanical execution in fights. Weaknesses, extreme inactivity in position in weaker positions. Very momentum-based team. think players to watch, as I mentioned before, Scout and Zika. I think that these two players are like top 5 in their position, but I think that very poor management of map in between objectives, poor play with support and jungle to pressure sides. All right. In terms of their range, I do think that LNG, you know, I can see a world where they make it to 5th, if I think about the range. 5th. 5th to what is the lower end of the range? I don't see them. It's hard for me to imagine them losing against anybody else besides maybe like Fnatic or Damwon on a bad day, you know. So we're going to put them 10th on the worst. I think the range thing is nice. I think it's good because I think it showcases the argument in a very fair form, and we are aware of the nuance of the variables that are at play, right? I think that's super important, right? I just to think about these players through the lens of, you know, like the main thing for me is like what makes them be able to break to 5 is just that Zika and Scout are really fucking good, I think. Like I think in terms of lane phase and team fighting, they are up there with the best of the best. I think in terms of champion death, I think Scout and Zika cover like decent amount of ground. I just worry about, you know, the rest of the team when it comes to this. Keep in mind, I do think Gala is a fucking good player. I think Gala is really fucking good. And if he has a great performance, I wouldn't be surprised. It's just that we need to consider the rest of the players on this list in terms of players that are here. And then Gala, for me, falls on the wayside. That's like, sadly, with what we've seen this year, Gala doesn't excite me, you know? All right. Number 8, this is where I slot in Team Liquid. So the weaker range of Team Liquid, because I think the strengths are very easy, right? I think the main concern for Team Liquid is the Gen.G poison. The Gen.G poison is basically, there is a feeling of comfort that Gen.G have gotten accustomed to. I think that Team Liquid suffered the same fate. I feel like Team Liquid Gen.G, in terms of how their playoffs went, is definitely like it was in parallel, you know? It was really in parallel, like how their stories kind of played out. You had the contender in FlyQuest and Hanwha Life. Contender in FlyQuest and Hanwha Life, and they basically really studied the strengths of the opponent. Very much so. They studied the strengths of their opponents, adapted to it, and in that, I think Gen.G and Team Liquid found like stagnation because they didn't have resistance until it was too late. Team Liquid, you know, as they opened up their draft, they picked Corki, Maokai, Kesante, 1, 2, 3, and this was something that, you know, they brought to the table. And it was just something that didn't work. They didn't follow the evolutions. You had APA not willing to play Smolder, didn't have as much prior on Tristana, didn't have Yon ready. All of a sudden, APS champion pool, who was an edge, became a disadvantage. The same thing as we saw happen to Chovy, because he stuck to the Corki. The same way Team Liquid stuck to the Corki. They stuck to the prep. Sometimes that's the right call. Sometimes you play 5 games of Azir and you're going to clutch it out. But sometimes I think that you need to put your players on champions that bring you agency. I think the Team Liquid as a team, I think that they have very strong role players in Core JJ and Impact. But when Yeon and APA aren't willing to pick the champions that are going to cut through the enemy team, they are going to be in trouble. They are going to be in trouble. Because Impact is going to play a select few champs. He's going to be really fucking good at it. He's going to be very, very solid. But it's going to be very rare that he completely carries games on an international stage. This split in summer, he did get the MVP, very well deserved. Nobody else touched him. But I think the idea of carrying games the same way he did with Kesante, dying, like winning 1v2s, picking Mordekaiser, winning 1v2s, the game style is going to be very different, I think, at this World Championship. And the top lanes he faces up against is going to be very different. So the main concern and the main challenge for Team Liquid is how can Yeon and APA keep playing champions that give them an edge in draft? Because KoJJ, Umti, and also Impact want to play a core of 3-4 champions. Very similar to, for example, Keen, right? Keen is a player with a very wide champion pool, but on this particular roster, he's slamming Kesante in most of the games, right? Because he wants to present opportunities for Canyon and Chovy to actually break the mold of the enemy draft and go deeper into their pools. So they have agency in the game. The way I see Team Liquid, I think APA and Yeon need to be the ones that break the form of the enemy through their champion choices. When was APA at his best? Was when Ziggs was unique. It was a challenge in draft. It was in a world where he had the Aurelion Soul in the pocket. You had the Tristana, you had the Koki. He was ahead of the curve. But coming into that finals, he was no longer ahead of the curve. And can we imagine a world where APA is going to play Yeon, is going to be playing the champions that form the meta? Because that is the responsibility that he has on his shoulders. APA improved a lot this year, but I think the main criticism towards Team Liquid and the main challenge that they need to face is how is APA going to perform under a new meta, right? That's the main thing. That's the main thing for me and the main challenge for Team Liquid. How is he going to perform? Because he performed fucking good with the Tristana, Koki, and so forth. But how is he going to look now playing the LeBlanc? Maybe Silas is a thing. Oriana, Syndra, you know? This is going to be a new challenge. Like APA is facing the same challenge as Cream is facing. Very fucking great year-round performances. But now this World Championship things are going to change. Right? What are the strengths? I think that macro-wise, very cohesive, very good at lane swaps and pressuring objectives. Very stable core in Core JJ and Impact. The weaknesses, it's like APA has not been tested through many metas. I think it's important to highlight that both APA and Yeon, I think Yeon is fine, because I think things are not going to change. I think if anything, Yeon should be more comfortable coming into Worlds. I think Kalista will be very high prio, right? Kalista is going to be very high prio. Varus he can play, Jhin he can play. I think that Yeon's going to be fine, but I think the main thing for me that is going to hold their ceiling in the pocket is how will APA adapt to the new world? Because in that LCS finals, he was not ready, in my opinion. And I think that's the main thing. It's like some of these players need to be clutch on their team. They need to be clutch on their team. And APA needs to be. Because Impact is not going to be like, if Impact picks Camille and 1v9s a game, I swear I will grow wings and I will fly. I will fly, bro. I'm telling you, I will fly. Impact is a fantastic fucking player. But the day he picks Camille is going to be a unique day. He has the Jax in the back pocket. His Jax is solid. He has a world skin after all. But usually the way he picks his champions is around the 1v2. But okay, players to watch, I think APA and Yeon. Umti, And when I say carry, I really means, like, it really means carry, you know? It's like picking the champion 5-4 and going deep into your pocket. You know? That's like the main thing for me. That is like the main thing. APA needs to be that guy for this team. APA and Yeon. Core JJ, Impact, Umti, they will cycle the same 3 champs and they will do a good job. Want to start betting this well, it's legit. Just go on the Discord, bro. What's the Discord? There's a link there and you can use the link. Just exclamation mark Discord and you'll find it, bro. Okay. The range, Team Liquid. Their range, in my mind, I think I have a hard time seeing Team Liquid breaking through to top 6. I really have a hard time seeing that. I think that LNG, DK, these teams are like lacking, but I see them as a 7-10. And the main team that I think that they can maybe upset win in my mind, which would be an upset still, in my opinion, is G2. G2 is number 7 for me. So G2, I think the main argument against G2 is, of course, their early game. Come out after 14 with disadvantages in many games and get away. I think the biggest strength is the fact that they come into a meta where I think mid lane, best players coming out of Europe, and these roles are very important at the World Championship. Very strong history of preparation in metas. I think this is a very high point. Maybe it's unfair, right? Maybe it's unfair, but I think that in terms of G2's preparation, looking from outside, I feel like they come into the tournaments like with really good fucking prep. And I think that matters. I think that really matters. They seem to be like, you know, they have the edge to fucking do. They basically shape the meta, right? They shape the meta. And I think that they do a very good job of preparing when it comes to like level 1s and understanding the strengths of teams. And I think that matters too, because it falls under the legacy in my opinion, right? I think that they have very good meta reads. I think we saw that in all of the last international tournaments that they played, because regardless of how you want to view their Worlds run even last year, I do think that they had good prep, but eventually, you know, it went bad. You know? I think that in terms of macro level is top tier. Competes with even the best teams in the world. My main concern for G2 is here. I think champion depth. I think you can argue that champion depth, G2 is the best in the world. No joke. In terms of champion depth, probably G2 has like a very large effective champion pool, right? Their macro is fucking up there, right? Their macro is fucking great. But I worry about this. Their lane phase and their team fighting. I think that when it comes to the micro department, I think that that's where they will get out-muscled. My main concern when it comes to a player to watch is Yike. You know, the cope take for G2, right, is that when it comes to their weakness, early game is the easiest thing to practice in scrims. That is the cope take for G2. I know that when it comes to MSI, they looked good, but we have to remember that MSI prepared them with the bootcamp. You know? MSI prepared them with the bootcamp, and the main thing is the whole summer their early games have looked very bad. Their early games have looked very bad the whole summer. So I don't want to put all weight at MSI. They managed to do it at MSI because their early games just got a lot worse. I think that Hanwha is extremely underrated. I think he's the best Western AD at this tournament. He has a lot of tough competition in the Eastern teams. But the main thing for me is, once again, I repeat, I think that in terms of where they are at here, I think that they, like in terms of legacy, I think the preparation is super good. I think their macro competes with the best. I think their champion depth in terms of knowing what Caps can play, Mickey can play, Hanwha can play, BB can play, even Yike, I think that they're up there. But when it comes to the early game, if they give up some of these leads, if they make a mistake as disgusting as dying 2v2 against any of the teams that are in this range, they will lose the game. They will lose the game. Some of those things they can't get away with. And then the cope take is, yo, they can practice this, right? That is the cope take. That early game is the most practicable thing that we have, right? A lot of people are referencing back to them beating Top Esports. Well, Top Esports is a team with a very wide range of performance. Their range of performance is bad. I think you can give props to G2 and at the same time say, yo, Top Esports played like fucking ass, you know, by their standard. You know? That's perfectly fair to say. Okay, players to watch, Caps and Mickey. I think that this World Championship, I think the main difference, if I think back to what the difference is between this G2 and the previous years of G2, I think that macro-wise, they are actually competing against. Macro-wise, they're on par. I think they're on par with Hanwha Life. I think they're on par with Gen.G. I think they're on par with Bilibili. But in the execution, in the fights, I think that this is where these teams are showing their demon self, right? Like Gen.G, Hanwha Life players, Bilibili players in team fights are demonic, absolutely demonic. So it's like you have the tools to get yourself through the door, but you're now in a house with these fucking brutes that want to fuck you up, you know? So that's my main concern. I think that Yike is someone that seems to be performing better when it comes to internationals. There's some games that stand out as like, what the fuck are you doing? Like the Belveth game. My main, like the big question mark is Yike's performance. I think that Yike's performance is a big question mark for me. But the reason I have G2 over Team Liquid, because I think that's the main question that people are going to ask, is that I do think that mid lane and support are the most important roles. And I think that Mickey is one of the best supports in the world. And I think that Caps maybe can like inch into top 5 at this tournament. And I think that G2 is in a setup where they can potentially do some damage to teams that are inconsistent, which is like Weibo, T1, and of course, Top Esports. But we put them 7th for a reason. There are some flaws, their early game, and I think Yike's performance. That scared me. But in terms of their range, you know, I think that their range can stretch them all the way till 4th. I think 4th to 10th. The teams that I don't see even on their best day not beating is Bilibili, Gen.G, and Hanwha Life. But this also, like the heavy lifting that comes out of this is that T1 LNG Weibo Gaming's form is up in the air. It's very up in the air. Very, very up in the air. All right, number 6. Let's see, are there any questions about anything, guys? Was there something that I was unclear about? Let's just take a little break moment. Was there anything that I was unclear about? I mentioned about how I think that mid lane and support are like the most important roles in my opinion, and I think that their macro is super strong in terms of how they side lane and how they farm. I think that BB and Caps do a wonderful fucking job, and I think that Mickey is very good at pursuing information. I think Hansama's form is better than ever, and I have the main concern about Yak's performance. I think that their macro level and their champion depth is what gives them a lot of points of entry, beating teams that are maybe above them in the list. And I do think that, the ceiling of Mickey's and Caps' performance is what makes me put them above Team Liquid. I think that, as I mentioned before, AP has more to prove because he has role players around him and he needs to be like cutting edge, Wasn't Mickey running it down at one point the split? He was, but I think that we know enough about Mickey and Caps at this point that that's okay, right? Because in the end, what we saw from Mickey when it came to the regionals, I think that Mickey took a big shit on every support in Europe in an extreme way. And I'm a person that when I watch most pro games, I watch it through the lens of support and mid. And I can tell you the impact that Mickey had was insanity. He made June look like a bum. 6, this is where it gets tricky, man. This is very tricky. Because at this point, I already mentioned that I have the combination of Gen.G, Hanwha Life, and Bilibili in my top 3. So these guys are the top 3. The problem is that the actual level of Europe support is pretty low. Well, the thing is, you can judge the level of a player by just watching the player, regardless of who he's playing against, right? And additionally, you have to think about the supports that are in other regions too, right? Think about the supports that come from other regions. We already mentioned Moham and Hang. These are not exciting players. Like the best supports coming out of the Eastern teams is like On, Mako, Delight, Lehens, right? And KIA, in certain circumstances, is one of the most dangerous players in the world, for sure. But in certain circumstances, he's very docile, right? So there's definitely players to pinpoint, right? It's like Crisp. I think Crisp didn't have a good run in the last best of fives that he played, right? In my mind, this might sound I will break it down more when I judge players, but I put I think Delight and On are the only 2 supports that, in my opinion, are better than Mickey. But nevertheless, now we need to find the combination of T1. We have to find the combination of T1, Weibo Gaming, and Top Esports. So I think that I will start off by putting T1 here. I will put T1 here. But the range is 2-1. The range is 2-1. The range is 2-1. So we have, let me just copy paste this so I can follow the same format. So the biggest strengths is what I mentioned before. I think their lane phase, team fighting, they have micro levels that can compete with the best and be the best in the right circumstances. That is a point of entry, right? We've seen these players be the best players in their position when it comes down to it. And that is what invites this very high range. They come in with the most heavy fucking legacy, the strongest legacy, the strongest clutch factor out of anybody. But the main question here, right, is champion death. That is where they suffer. Champion death is truly where they suffer. When it comes to KIA playing melee champs, it's not that he's mechanically bad playing them. It really isn't. It has never come down to them being mechanically bad at champs. But when it comes to macro, so this is how I describe T1. People have heard this many times. But T1 is at their best when they are playing bot lane pairings that goes and pressures through mid. So Lucian Nami, Kalista Renata, Lulu Aphelios, Senna, right? Senna. These are combos that pressure through mid and gain information through mid. Lux Caitlyn, another good shout. When they can pressure through mid, they are so fucking good. They are so fucking good. Because it means that they pressure hard enough to get information for Zeus and Faker to push side lanes for free. And when they can do that, they meet up at the team fights and they outclutch everybody. But the issue now is that they need to connect with their support and jungle to contest side, to play together with Faker and Zeus. And this is something that they haven't done for the last 3 years, guys. They haven't done this for the last 3 years. Last year, when they won Worlds, they picked fully for lane, and they were allowed to do so because it was all about getting level 6 in preparation for Rift Herald, and that opened up the game. And when they picked fully for lane, they picked range support pairings in most cases, whether it was Bard or anything else, Renata, and then they played through mid, which allowed Zeus and Faker to play side more freely. Lucian Nami, Milio, so forth. This is where T1 is at their best, because it gives Owner the freedom to play as he wants, because he gets a lot of information through mid, and their solo laners can push. When T1 don't have this, what happens? Zeus gets farmed on side. Faker gets killed on side. And they cannot choose the timers where they group as much as they want. And that to me is where T1's weakness lies. Macro-wise, they can only execute the way they want to during certain champion circumstances. And I have, T1 is a very special team. So I'm going to highlight this. Every other team has their own issues too and the personal things. But it's crazy to me how overworked T1 is. Like, we just found out that T1 has to fly to Hong Kong before they fly out to Europe to do a fan meet. These are so overworked players. Like, Faker is carrying the viewership and the monetary system of League of Legends on his lonesome, bro. My man needs to heal, bro. My man needs to heal. Their way to play macro functions only well during specific as explained in the video. Just watch it, please. Place to watch. Players to watch is Zeus and KIA. I think that the lifeblood of this team is if Zeus and KIA get the support in the meta and in their team play to play at their best. There's a lot of things that they need to fall into place then. It's like Owner and Faker need to play champions that create space. Gumyushi needs to pick the AD that wins lane so KIA can play whatever the fuck he wants. I think that the carries of this team is Zeus and KIA. When Zeus and KIA can play at their best in the circumstance that I mentioned, I think that T1 is then like one of the best, if not the best, in the world. It's always, to me, when Zeus doesn't get pressured and he can play his own game, and KIA and Gumayushi enact so much pressure, and Faker is just like building in a way. Like, how many times do we see Faker buy Crown into Hourglass? How many times do we see this? He just wants to play on side with zero attention, and he wants to pull people to him and not get dove. That's the Faker classic. And then he pushes forward to give all these young kids as much space as possible. You know? So for me, Zeus and KIA are like, Zeus and KIA performing super good. I think that's a big sign of, you know, them being in good shape, you know? I think the main hope for T1 as well is that I don't think Faker performed well in Tristana Koki meta. If it's Talia time, Azir time, you know, LeBlanc time, maybe Faker can be a lot better, you know? I think a meta shift is very healthy for Faker, you know? I think these carry mids is not his style, really isn't. And the hope is, with the nerf of supports, maybe T1 can make a run to the first place by enforcing their own meta and play the ranged champions. But pay attention to these details of what I mentioned. When T1 have drafts where Owner and Faker play champions that create space, and Zeus has some deep counter pick that can play on side with freedom, and that the bot lane has something that pressures through mid, that forces the enemy to interact around the vision that KIA builds around mid. So we continue. This is where it gets weird, because I can see a world where I place either or, right? I can definitely see a world where I place either or. I think if, like, when it comes to T1, if it wasn't for how they lost against Hanwha Life and lost against Dplus, you know, I can see the 6-5-4, I can see arguments for placing them differently, you know? But for me, the next one up here, it all depends, you know, on how much sympathy you view Weibo Gaming with. Because Weibo Gaming did a very nice run into the finals. And they beat Top Esports while Top Esports looked at their worst. Right? That's the weird part about Top Esports, is that they can look so good and so ass between 2 days. How Top Esports played against G2 was awful. And then they fight with Gen.G, tooth and nail, they do it fucking great. They can play a series where they beat and compete with the best of the best, and then the next day they lose against FPX. Like, what the fuck is that? Now, Weibo Gaming, I do think that their run was very honest. I think that Breed started playing better, and I think there's arguments for saying that Light was the best performing AD in the world when it came to summer. We have finally found the meta that Light is a demon under, and that is Misfortune, right? Misfortune, fucking Ezreal, Jhin, Ashe, Ziggs. Light legit had the best performance of any AD all summer. Light has been insane. The main drop-off for Weibo Gaming when it came to their playoff run, like especially after the finals, was that I think that Chris' performance was really suffering. But my main issue is that I don't know how hard to judge it. I spoke with Upset yesterday. He's like, bro, if I played finals and I have like all this fucking adrenaline running, I got smacked by Bilibili and I need to play the next day, bro, I'm gonna play fucking worse the next day. I won't be able to fucking sleep after the finals. And obviously this is like very intangible. We don't know how to fucking measure it. But Weibo did play a lot worse after their playoff run. And then Scout and his LNG came in fresh, beat them 3-0, you know, and Chris was legit hinting at that series. So in my mind, I have to put Top Esports 5. Top Esports. Still, I think Top Esports is a team that can make it. Like Top Esports is a very weird team. Is that like in terms of their ranges, they can beat anybody. But can they beat anybody enough to make it to first place? I doubt it. You know, I doubt it. What are the strengths of Top Esports? Mechanically insane team, right? I think that in terms of their mechanical ceiling, they are fucking good. We have JackeyLove, Mako, Tian, 369, and Cream, right? Really, really strong players. I do think, though, that this has been one of the more quiet years for 369. I feel like it doesn't have as easy, as not easy, but as clear of a role on this team as on other teams. I think that 369 was at his best last year when it was very clear cut what was required from him. Then he was a fucking beast, right? A fucking beast. But this year there's a wider range to what is required of him, especially when his bot lane is so damn inconsistent. That's what's so weird, you know? Mako and JackeyLove can both be the best bot lane in the world and also be one of the weaker ones in the top. I think if you look at their series against G2 or their series against, for example, FPX, like that series against FPX that they played was ass. And the series that they played against Weibo Gaming when they were taken to 5 games was also quite ass from JackeyLove and Mako. And I feel like that is where the blood pumps. Because I think Cream is still, you know, even though he's played for quite some time, when it comes to the internationals and what he's bringing to the table in comparison to the other mid laners, his feet are barely wet. Think about the mid lane experience that is across the field here, okay? You have Faker, Caps, Chovy, Xiao Hu, right? This is insanely good. Like mid laners with insane amounts of experience. And that matters. I think that Cream was one of the best mid laners in the Tristana, Koki setup. But in the shift, he was struggling. He was playing some of the Lucian and the Zeri, but then I feel like he kind of fell off. Right? Knight as well, of course. I didn't mention Knight, but Knight is up there. Someone in the chat mentioned that Yone is meta. Right? Yone is meta, but that's only one champ. Right? That's one champion. Banning Yone against some of these players is going to be a go-to. And I think against a player like Cream, I think definitely that's a go-to, right? You don't want to play against Cream or Zeka in a Yone environment because they're going to pick Akali, LeBlanc. You're going to be put in an environment where they are the most comfortable. They are the most comfortable. So definitely against a player like Cream, I imagine, like if Cream needs to play mages, like if I see Cream locking Orianna or Talia, I think that sucks ass. The more and more I think about it, maybe I'm changing my most banned champ to Yone. maybe I go into my pick'em and I put my most banned Yone. Maybe I change it. It's maybe a good shout. We have some Yone demons. And then we put Akali as the champion that is going to have high win rate. Now the issue is we're going to have Europeans that are going to pick Akali and ruin it. Nevertheless, mechanically insane team. I think that snowball insanely well and with good momentum. Pressure side super good when Cream is playing champions that are strong on side. Weaknesses, I think it's hard to pinpoint it, but inconsistencies of their bot lane. I think that I know historically, I know that Tian has been kind of like an Inter on occasion, but I don't think that you can hold that to Tian right now. You can't hold that to Tian. I think Tian has been fantastic this year. I think Tian has been good. I think Tian deserves props for this year. I think he's been one of like the most consistent players of top esports. I think he played good against Gen.G. I think Tian has been very consistent. I can't put that on him. But I think the players to watch is JackeyLove and Cream. I think these two guys are going to be able to elevate the ceiling of this team and also pull down the ceiling of this team. It's funny because for last year, I protected and defended JackeyLove so much. Because last year, he was insanely consistent. But this year, he's less so. And now it's reverse. Now I'm defending Tian. I'm just fighting the narratives, fighting the narratives. I think the inconsistencies of their bot lane for a team that requires their bot lane to do so well is their biggest danger. See G2 series, FPX series, Weibo series. Their range, I think top esports range is like 1 to fucking 9, bro. 2 to 16. The main question is like, do I see them beating? The range of 1 is weird because I can't imagine top esports winning the tournament, but I can imagine them beating anybody. But I can't imagine them beating anybody a couple of times. So it's like, I think I have to put them 2. I have to put them 2. But then it looks weird that T1 is 6th. I do think that if top esports plays against T1 tomorrow, I do think they can win. But T1 is a very unique team, so they are going to be the anomaly of this page. They're gonna be the anomaly. Because I do think that the lower end of T1 is more likely in terms of their play. I think that top esports is just like, I do imagine that top esports is going to be a favorite against T1 if they play tomorrow. So I think that we are in the loop there. All right. Weibo Gaming. Weibo Gaming. It feels fucking weird to put them 4th, if I'm going to be honest. This pool of 4, 5, 6, these are some weird ass teams. these 3 teams are so weird. These teams are so weird, man. Oh man, yeah, some of the weirdest teams ever. My main concern is their solo laners have such a wide range of performance. Their strengths, 1,000, and Light arguably had the best performances in their positions worldwide. I don't know, like I'm looking at Weibo 4 and it feels so wrong because I'm just thinking about Xiaohu and this guy just fucking phones it in sometimes, bro. Like even last year at Worlds, like what the fuck was Xiaohu doing? Like still he made finals. So he gets the job done, He gets the job done. So it's... Nevertheless, Weibo Gaming, right? They made a very, very good run. I think the main thing that was holding them back was the performance of Breathe and Xiaohu. I think that Breathe and Xiaohu performed a lot better as things continued, and I think that made them a finalist. I don't want to underrate Weibo Gaming because I don't want to underrate them because, right? I do have sympathy for what they had to go through, considering they played finals into another best of 5 and LNG came fresh and they were in tune with the meta, I think the meta changes are positive for Xiaohu, and I do think Breathe showed better gameplay as playoffs went on. But if it wasn't for those playoffs, bro, like I thought that Weibo would be like, I didn't think Weibo was going to go fucking, I didn't think Weibo was going to ever qualify to Worlds. I'm looking at these three teams and they are so hard to place, bro. They are really hard to place. I think there's arguments to fucking swap them around whatever we want to do, really. There's really argument to swap them around however you want. Because at the same time, right, a player like Tarzan, international performances, you know, that has to weigh heavy, right? We have to be consistent because T1, we mentioned that they have great international performances, right? And that is like a factor, right? But at the same time, we're thinking about Tarzan, right? And Top Esports. I honestly have to move Top Esports to 4. I don't see what arguments I can put to put Weibo above top, besides the fact that they beat them once, you know? I think that's what it comes down to, man. I worry about Breathe, Jahu, and Tarzan when it comes to international performances. I have to admit this is very difficult for me, guys. I think we just move it like that. We demote Weibo to 5. My main reasoning is Top Esports were competing, man. They were competing against Gen.G at MSI. They were competing. EWC doesn't matter as much, right? But it's more about like the ceiling of the performance. I just think when I just look at their rosters, I just look at 369, I look at Cream, I compare solo lanes. I think that Tian is not far away enough against, of Tarzan to justify Tarzan and Light being the reason to push them above their solo lane as being so weak. So the players to watch, I would say Tarzan and Light. I think that Chris heavily underperformed and the run in the regional. It's a cause of concern. I think this is the way, guys. But I repeat, I think like later in the next days, we're going to look at other people's lists. We're going to look at other people's lists, and I think that however anyone would place these three teams, I think makes sense. I can say that, bro. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to go to sleep, and then I wake up, and then maybe I change my mind, you know? Now it gets interesting. Not super interesting. I think it's like these three teams for me are like the contenders, you know? The number one contenders. Number 3 is Hanwha Life. Not that surprising, right? It's like strengths. I think they have strengths is like Zeka, Delight, Peanut. Really signify the most important aspects of the meta right now. Connect super well, punish on side, giving pressure to Zeka to scale into the game. I didn't give a range for Weibo, yeah. Weibo range. I don't know, Weibo, like I think that they should be floating. Like I don't think that they have as high of a potential as T1 and Top Esports, sincerely. But I do think that Weibo Gaming is like a solid. I think they are like solid. Like I don't see a world where Weibo Gaming is gonna beat any of the top 3, but I think it's like my view of it is like this. This is their range. Okay. So back to Hanwha Life. Zeka, Delight, Peanut really signify the most important aspects of the meta right now, in my opinion. They connect super well, they play around mid super well, and then they punish on side, giving pressure to Zeka to scale into the game. And then Zeka actually fucking carries. I think Hanwha Life was way more advanced than Gen.G macro-wise, because I think the main weakness of Gen.G is that Lehens has straight up, Lehens has had too easy of a life on Gen.G. So what I want to highlight is when it comes to Gen.G and their flow, is that Keen and Chovy played around side beautifully on their own. They were out farming everybody, they were outplaying everybody without the activity of a support. And that's why I don't rate Lehens that high. I don't rate Lehens so high because his job is too easy on Gen.G. Keen and Chovy play isolated and they manage to steal a lot of waves on side. But against Hanwha Life, all of a sudden, Peanut and Delight were pressuring side, and Chovy didn't have breathing room. Zeka was posturing forward with the info that his support jungle gave, and they were threatening dive. And Zeka was like solo killing Chovy on side because Chovy had no freedom to breathe. So in my mind, I feel like Gen.G's approach to the game got a little outdated, while Hanwha Life is very dated. I think that in terms of a jungle support pairing, I think that Delight and Peanut are really fucking scary. Really, really fucking scary. Weakness, straight up Doran. I think Doran, keep in mind, I do think that Doran serves a purpose for this team. I think that he has a very consistent output, even when he ints. He has a weird way of dying in the most miraculous ways. But when it comes to Doran, like if Hanwha Life is up against Bilibili, I'm really fucking scared. Keen is the type of player that is going to perform 95% no matter the game. But Bin really, really puts his foot in your mouth. Bin and Zeus, they are fisters. Keen is a shield. Bin and Zeus are blades that attack you and cut you down. And I think Doran here, I think that as a top laner, I just don't see him being strong enough to win a world championship, right? And I think that the main thing you have to highlight here too is, you know, Peanut is carrying a lot of luggage coming into World Championship 2, you know? I think that matters too. And I think Doran, and the second aspect is champion depth. I think that Hanwha Life did a very good job of mastering the meta of 14-15, but we don't know if that's going to transfer, right? We don't know if this is going to continue. The team that is Gen.G and Bilibili, like they have been insanely competitive the whole year, and there wasn't specific metas where they didn't perform under whatever, right? Gen.G plundered the best of 5, and Bilibili lost against Gen.G at MSI, right? Fair play, that happens. Bilibili beat everybody else. Gen.G and Bilibili, these are just players with a way bigger legacy in terms of champion pool depth. And that's why I think this is like a big question mark. Because let's say all of a sudden the world's meta is very mage heavy. Well, sure, it's like, I'm not one of those people that says that Zeka is like melee champion OTP. I'm not one of those people, definitely not. But I do think I prefer other players on mages over Zeka, right? Like whether it's Orianna, Azir. Like even in his Worlds run, Zeka gets memed for being Akali style as OTP, but in the Worlds run, he played Ahri, played Azir in the 5th game, and smurfed out of his fucking mind, played Orianna and fucking smurfed on Scout's forehead. Like he played everything. He played everything this Worlds. But doesn't mean that I don't prefer other players on mages, right? Because that's the conversation here. Hanwha Life being 3rd over being 2nd, over being over a team like Gen.G, even though they beat them. They beat them in one circumstance. The longevity overall and the year in sight matters. Because I think pretty much if Gen.G played that best of 5, has 1 week to prepare and play against Hanwha Life again, I'm putting Gen.G as a favorite still. Right? Players to watch. I think it comes down to, like, if you want to be an optimist, of course it's Zeka. Zeka last time he was at Worlds had one of the best performances of all time. There was Zeka, and then Peanut. I know people are excited about Viper, right? People are excited about Viper, but AD Carry is currently in a position where I think this is the role with the least amount of agency. The least amount of agency out of any role right now. Hanwha Life. I think there is definitely a world where they make it into a, like, there's a world where they make it and win the tournament. I don't think that's impossible to believe, because I think that this trio is insanely good. And if meta top is like fucking you can get away with picking K'Sante every game and it's chill, that's cool. But I think there's definitely a world where they win, right? And then the range, bro, like I think that that's weird, because we have to kind of have to accept that these 3 guys, if these 3 are rated like this, then there needs to be a world where they can also make it down, right? Because of their legacy. All right, moment of truth, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, Viper, best ADC in the world. Yeah, I'm gonna rank him number 1 in my top lists for AD carries, but I don't think AD carries are super important. That's the issue. Sometimes your role is just not as important. You get it? Number 2. Oh, Yamato, you're so biased! Ah! Gen.G. All right. Strengths. So, they have the highest level of cohesive discipline. I think in terms of fight selection, in terms of farming side, and not going all the way, I think that Gen.G is very good. They have Chovy goes, I think Chovy as a strength goes without saying. I think that Gen.G probably the most consistent and high level laners in Lakers. What the fuck? I think they have the highest level of cohesive discipline, they have Chovy, and they have the most consistent and high level laners in the world, right? Weakness, it's like the main weakness for me, right, is they must show their willingness to break form. I think they lost against Hanwha Life because they were too scared to adapt real time. And if you want to point any criticism towards Chovy, is his stubbornness surrounding champions, right? His stubbornness surrounding champions is the easiest criticism you can push towards Chovy. The Chovy haters, they don't know the one secret, but he was repetitively slamming Koki in the finals. Why did he not try to pivot into a Yon angle? The one international tournament he did win was when they were willing to drop a Yon Karthus 4-5, pick Nidalee, because the two most important players on this team, as the same way we described Team Liquid, the most important players on this team is Canyon and Chovy. Canyon and Chovy. This team thrives when they are willing to go deep and build on their depth, and they are capable of picking the champions that cut through the enemy's composition. Gen.G lost their finals the same way Team Liquid lost theirs. Not, of course, because of minions, but in terms of their prep, it was very rigid. You compare that to their MSI run, I think that Gen.G had such a high level, right? But they stagnated. Gen.G is top 2 because they've stagnated from a point that is so high up, right? And the main concern for me when it comes to Chovy is he's coming into this World Championship. Chovy is a player that hates. Look at this, okay? Chovy is very peculiar with what he plays, right? 23 Corki games. He stuck with it. He had a game or two of Smolder. There were some occasions where things stood out. But look at his lifetime, okay? Lifetime. Orianna, last year at Worlds, didn't play it. Didn't want to play it. They banned it. He was the one spamming Akali. Orianna is not his cup of tea. He doesn't like playing Orianna. Another champion that is very likely to be good at the World Championship, Syndra, right? A lot of talk about Syndra, right? Syndra is not a thing. And in these moments, he's going to be the player to drop an Akali. He's going to bring out the Akali. On occasion, when he's feeling it, he does play LeBlanc. But I have to say that the biggest weakness that Chovy has, there is certain moments in time when he's playing tournaments where he's not playing the most important champions on the patch. MSI he won because he was the only one capable of playing Aurelion Sol, besides maybe APA and Caps. But out of the Eastern mids, like Faker and Cream playing or Knight playing Aurelion Sol, they looked like they were on drugs. Or Corki too. How many Corki packages from Faker, Cream, and Knight did we see just Ryanair straight into the enemy team? And then he busted out the Yon as well, right? I think that if I think about Chovy as a player, Yon being open, very comfortable. Yon, Akali, Silas, he's in comfort zone. He can play Azir in those cases too, very cool. People are going to remove Yon. The more and more I think about it, I'm changing Yon to my most banned. I'm changing Yon to my most banned, guys. Yon is most banned 100%. I'm changing it. So sucks for you if you watch my video. I'm pivoting to Yon. But nevertheless, my point is, there's going to be certain meta circumstances where he's going to be playing champs that maybe aren't as good. And he's going to play them well, but he's going to struggle to carry games the same way he does. Right? It's very, like, Chovy is very peculiar because, like, I look back at his match list, right? And it's like, we find the Orianna games. Let's find the Orianna games because it's kind of funny. So he plays Orianna. Let's see, maybe season 13 it was. Does he play Orianna here? I want to find the last time the homie played Orianna. Season 14. Let's see. Did he play Orianna? Fuck, I wrote Orianna here, but I wanted to search. He didn't play Orianna this year, right? Here it is. Okay, here. Defeat. Gen.G versus Top Esports. Gen.G versus Bilibili. Oh yeah, he ran it down here. You guys remember this game? He didn't play good. Orianna victory. TRX versus Gen.G. Okay. Nevertheless, there's some champions where Chovy doesn't want to break form, and he wants to play the same thing over and over again, you know? And that to me is what is going to hold them back from winning a world championship. Because this shit, we don't want to see it. This shit... Where game 2 it was... Bro, like, even game 2, bro. Like, fucking... They forced him to go deep, you know? It's good. The funny thing is, like, people banning 3 mid laners against him, right? People banning 3 mid laners against him, and that forced him to go deep. Otherwise, he would, like, always just Koki, Aurelio, you know? And sometimes you can get away with that, definitely. Sometimes you can get away with that. But sometimes you can't. And I hope that Chovy and Canyon are willing to shape the meta, because that's how good they are. That's how good they are. I want them to, like, if Gen.G is gonna win worlds, it is because Canyon and Chovy are being put on champions where they have agency. That's what we want to see. Gen.G wins worlds if Canyon and Chovy can play champions that have agency. And then finally here, Bilibili. Bilibili. Strengths. So, with the addition of Wei, I think Bilibili have actually taken that MSI loss and actually added that layer to their gameplay. Wei adds an element of consistency and gives them a backbone. Because Shun, On, Bin, Elk, they are way too fucking wild. Way too fucking wild. Really wild. Wei is a backbone that is willing to simplify the game, be there, cover for these fucking powerful lanes that they have. The main difference in terms of their macro is that they are in tune with the active swapping game that Gen.G used against them when they lost. They're in tune with this. Because Gen.G basically pulled Elk, On, and Bin out of their lane phases. They couldn't squeeze and pressure as much, which made them lose momentum, and they over-postured in moments they couldn't, which made Gen.G keep momentum. But Bilibili have downloaded this type of gameplay pattern themselves. They have really added this to their gameplay. Bilibili walked away from that MSI and practiced this in particular. There are certain games that stand out. For example, Bilibili versus Weibo Gaming Game 1. You're going to see a Gen.G macro be played out to the point where I said at that moment in time that Bilibili is more Gen.G than Gen.G is currently. And there's been this constant battle of Knight against Chovy, of who is the best mid laner. I know that people are gonna say, oh, there's gonna be a lot of people out there that only watch internationals. They don't watch LPL. You know, LPL don't have a lot of watches, but the competition there is fucking stiff and tough. And Knight, in my mind, against Chovy. Chovy, I think overall, is the best player to touch the game. But there are certain metas where Knight executes better. I would say Annie, Lissandra, Nico, and I think Syndra. Syndra and LB, I think is big Knight comfort. LB is kind of funny for Chovy because he's fucking good at it. But there's metas where he refused to pick it. He refused to pick it. I think that Chovy is a way better Yone. I think he's way better Akali. But I think that where we are heading meta-wise, I think that it's looking very interesting for Knight. At MSI, Knight was out of his element. He was getting smoked. I don't want to see Knight on Azir. I don't want to see him on Aurelion Sol. I don't want to see him fucking play the old Koki. Very bad in comparison to Chovy. Not even close. Not even close. Both of them are great Ahri players, great Sylas players. But I think Bilibili, the main thing is, I think very strong lanes and have added the lane swap macro, the ongoing lane swap macro to their weapons, where it gives them the stability they have lacked. Weaknesses. I think the main weakness of Bilibili still is that I think they are very overeager to take fights. Very overeager to take fights in bad conditions. This is something Gen.G almost never do, right? Gen.G is very sharp and disciplined in their fight selection. I think that in summer, maybe less so. But I think there's many cases where I'm watching Bilibili and I'm like, why the fuck are we taking this fight? You don't have Alistar ult. No flash on Alistar? Why are we doing this shit, you know? But this has been less so. This has become less so with Wei, you know? I think this was a very big problem extended to the lane phase too, but I think Wei has added consistency. Players to watch, in my opinion, I think Bin and On. You can also put Knight in here, argue, but I think Bin comes into this tournament as the best top laner in the world. I think that Bin single-handedly made the series against Gen.G at MSI competitive. I think that he was absolutely crazy. Like, if you want to learn how to carry games as a top laner, look no further. I think the main thing that Bin has over Zeus is the fact that this guy doesn't die to ganks. People try to run after him, people try to pressure him, but they don't catch him. He farms insanely well, chooses his fights insanely well, and even during the most amount of pressure, he is getting giga value. Bin gameplay is a work of art, plain and simple, work of art. And I think in terms of lane phase, Zeus and Bin are there. I just think that the main thing that Bin has over Zeus is that this guy is just unkillable when it comes to side laning. I think Zeus is up there in lane phase and also in terms of how he fights, but I think that Bin is way better at like how to pressure side, how to pressure into mid, how to make sure he doesn't die to any ganks, how to be in tune with the swap game. I think that Bin is just better there, man. You know? Which makes Zeus a way more volatile player. Well, but Bin is like... Crazy thing about Bin, right, is this guy is insanely young. He's had one of the craziest careers of all time. He's turning 21, which is crazy to think about. First year out, Suning, World Championship finals for some fucking reason. Bunch of players that never fucking touched anything ever again after that run. Like looking at that run. So FM was fucking great, but you have a bunch of players that never did anything in their career after that run. And then next year, RNG is fucking with him, right? RNG are trading Bin for Uzi with Bilibili, and then they want to force Bilibili to pay for every match that Uzi plays. Shit like this after Bin wins MSI with RNG. He goes back to Bilibili, still is the main carrier of that team, is giga impactful. He waits for the arrival of his boy. He waits for the arrival of his boy, Abe, to then pop off and become a very, very, you know, impactful team. Both at the World Championship beating Gen.G, right? And of course MSI making a second place. And now he's united with Knight, back-to-back LPL splits, MSI finals. Like, this is a crazy fucking career to have under your belt. Crazy career to have under your belt. Nevertheless, enough with the Bin glazing. Like, I can glaze all these fucking players forever, bro. Like, I didn't glaze Canyon enough because this guy, bro, he's Clutchmeister Deluxe. That's why I said, like, if Canyon and Chovy are in positions where they have agency, I think they can fucking carry games, bro. I want to see that Canyon that locks fucking Kazakhs out of fucking nowhere against the champion that just fucking smoked your team in game 4 when you're 2-1 down. You know, I want to see that fucking motherfucking Canyon that picks Nidalee when nobody else does. I want to see that fucking Canyon and Chovy that picks Yon and Cardus when nobody else does. I want to see agency in their hands because they have very strong role players in Keen and Lehens and Pays, very strong role players. But you need to be the blade that is the most sharpened, you know? And I think that gives Bilibili a very wide spread. I think that Bin, Elk, like Bin, Knight, very strong carry players, you know? I think it's like only T1 and Bilibili are coming into this tournament with the top laner that can fucking drag games on their own, you know? And I think that's what makes fucking Bilibili so fucking dangerous. I think in terms of where you place their individual players, at least for me personally, I put On as the best support, Bin as the best top laner, Knight as the second best mid, and then Wei, I think probably you would put Canyon, Tarzan, Peanut. I'll probably put them above, but Wei is up there too, you know? And then you have Elk, who had a pretty fucking lackluster summer, but then he's fucking good in finals again, and all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, does any of the fucking anything he did matter? Because it's Elk, you know? So it's going to be very interesting. For me, Bilibili is a favorite because of the main thing is like they have added and adapted to the weakness they showed against MSI. And they've shown that in games, which to me is a very, very great signifier. And then taking the meta into account too, I do think that it's moving in the direction of being good for, of course, Bilibili. While for Gen.G and Hanwha Life, it carries a little bit more question marks, you know? In terms of what kind of... Because like Zeka and Chovy are like similar player profiles, you know? Peanut was way better than Canyon in summer. Way better. But when you judge players based off of my criteria, like the legacy and the clutch factor, right? Like I do think that Canyon is very special when it comes to tough series. Because I think he played even well in the Hanwha Life series. He played very well in the Hanwha Life series. In my opinion, in the finals. Like he could have... Like, tell me this Hanwha Life versus Gen.G game 5. Tell me that they wouldn't have, like this fight here that occurs, right? That happens around Drake. Let me show you guys. You can't say Wei is better than Peanut. Yeah. That's what I said, right? I think that Tarzan, Canyon, and Peanut, I think that they have been more impressive as players than Wei, right? Look at this, right? This is absolutely crazy, all things considered. Is this the fight that I'm looking for? I don't think it is, right? I think it was the previous fight. Let me find it. Fuck, what is the fight? This. Oh my days. Canyon, like Canyon, this is game 5. And Canyon smurfs the shit out of this. He smurfs the shit out of the situation. Imagine how different the conversation would be if Pace just plays the situation good. It's crazy how fucking narrow it is, you know? Because Canyon, first, he steals the fucking Drake, you know? He secures the Drake. And then here, Peanut, he ults Skarner, bro. He misclicks. He wants to get Chovy, but he clicks Skarner. And then here in this moment, the Skarner ult gets channeled on the Vi ult. He pulls 3, and all Pace needs to do is fucking ult here and murder these folk. But he goes for the Yon. Oh my days. What do we do in Pace? Oh. The reason I want to show this is because Canyon fucking smurfs out of his face off here, right? Like he fucking plays this fucking good. Brings winning chances. But here they are playing fucking, the most important players on the team are playing Koki Skarner, you know? Alright. Bilibili. I think like if they don't make top 4, I think it's, bro, I think it's really troll, bro. This is a top 4 team. This as well is a top 4 team. Like they are making top 4. That's just simply no way, bro. Like they can get screwed by draws. It's like, haha, Yamato, look at them. They're playing in quarters. Fuck you, Yamato. If that happens, it happens. But like this is like in terms of level at the team, you know. So this is where we land, guys. 100 Thieves, Mad Lions, Fnatic, FlyQuest, DK, LNG, Team Liquid, G2, T1, Weibo, Top Esports, Hanwha Life, Gen.G, Bilibili. I think that these 2 teams, if they lose against anybody else but themselves, I think it's a big disappointment. Like, this is a tournament that should be a night trophy or a trophy. Genuinely. Because when we look at the teams that are below them in these 3 goofball teams, these are some goofballs. These are some goofball teams that come into this World Championship with 1 arm, 1 leg. They are bleeding out of their mouth. They have 1 eyeball. Bro, like, they are coming in with some crazy business. But I hope this was a more fun way to do it, because I wanted to make it very clear what my criteria is. And I want to remind you that this is with my own bias, you know, because it's like you see things and you don't see things depending on what you're biased towards. It's like I am giga horny to support gameplay and mid lane gameplay. Like, I am just watching how mid lanes farm side and how they carry fights and how supports set them up, you know? How they set them up. And that's it. All right, let's see if there's some fucking... are there some in-houses going on? Okay, G2 is screaming. G2 is screaming. All right. Mickey over Carrier. I'm putting Mickey over Carrier. People are gonna hate my Mickey placing more than they hated fucking the Mickey placing of Kadril. Like, you want to have a fucking... This is... Like, I'm gonna do the player tier list after tomorrow, right? I'm gonna do it tomorrow, but it's like I have on Delight into Mickey on 3, and I'm arguing with my brain if I'm gonna put Make over Mickey. That's where I'm at.